emails I want to share. There's one here, I hope I can find it right now. And it kind of scared the crap out of me, only because I've been there and this guy really got across what happened to him clearly, and it's not good. Not a good outcome psychologically afterwards, you know. Here it is. Found it. Okay, now listen to this one. This is in Chilliwack Lake, which I'm familiar with. A lot of you people are too. They're from BC. And where this guy was, as the crow flies, it looks like it's I don't know, half a kilometer, 2 kilometers, or a couple miles away from the Washington State, British Columbia border. Steve, appreciate all the effort you put into bringing awareness to the outside world. This is my story. I've suffered nothing but ridicule and jokes in the last 35 years regarding this incident. No name attached to this, please. Thanks for that. September 1986. It was the year of Expo in Vancouver. It was also the year that changed my life. I was in my late 20s. I was a fishing, hunting, outdoors fanatic who figured he had life by the tail. I had a great job where I worked 12-hour shifts, and when I worked 3 days straight, I got paid for 40 hours and had the next 4 days off to do whatever I wanted. It was a perfect schedule for me, as it allowed me to be in the great outdoors 4 days a week and absorb Mother Nature in all her glory. I was BC bred and raised, and learned bushcraft, hunting, fishing, and shooting from my retired uncle. He was a great teacher. We had many hunting trips under our belts. BC is vast, and I've been in our neck of the woods many times, exploring Braylorne, Goldbridge, Seton Portage area, which is a serious hotbed for numerous sightings, coincidentally. On this particular 4-day stretch, I decided to stay close to home and camp on the south end of Chilliwack Lake. I don't know if you're familiar with this lake, but in the 70s and 80s, it was a great place to camp because it was within an hour of my house. The far south end, away from the government campsites, was usually empty in off-season, and even during summer months was not overcrowded. I arrived that September morning at about 10 a.m. I had stopped at the government campsite at north end of the lake and had loaded the back of my truck with a bunch of firewood. Remember when firewood was free? I remember looking around the government site. There was not a soul there, not one boat in the dock or in the water. The south end of the lake had a semi-sandy beach, and if your truck was a 4x4, you could cross Depot Creek and camp right on the sand near the edge of the water. When I arrived this Thursday morning, there was no one camped anywhere, not a soul on the beach. I knew I'd have at least a day by myself before the weekend warriors showed up with their loud music and party attitudes. I pulled my truck parallel to the water, about 20 feet from the creek and about 75 feet from the edge of the lake. I unloaded my boat and motor and all the firewood from the back of the truck. By the time I had the gear arranged and boat in the water, it was getting close to noon. I grabbed a few sandwiches out of the cooler, jumped in the boat, and turned north to fish with the slight breeze coming up the lake. The reason I'm going into such detail about everything comes into play here a little farther on. The way my truck was parked, the wind direction, etc., etc. I went north for about an hour. I'd used my little 4-horse kicker motor to cruise up the lake about 3/4 of its length, spun about to face back south and dropped the line in the water. I now pulled the kicker motor up and dropped my little electric thruster in. With the slight breeze coming up the lake, the little electric had just the right slow, sweet speed for my lake troll to bob the broad tip perfectly. I had a perfect day. No boats, no noise, sunny, a few clouds, and a nice slight breeze bringing the tiniest ripples on the water. Perfect fishing day. I was about an hour in and about 10 or 15 minutes away from the campsite when I first noticed it. It was a god-awful stench that would hit me every few minutes. The kind of smell when you encounter a dead carcass that had been bloating for about a week. It was terrible, and I figured there must have been a deer or bear carcass laying on the beach a few hundred yards upwind. I steered the boat another 40 feet offshore to get away from the smell. Snow is about 60 to 70 feet offshore, and the smell seemed to have abated. If you look at a satellite shot of Chilliwack Lake and view the south end, you will see there is almost a point where Depot Creek runs into the lake. It has a tree barrier, and it is not until you are past a clump of trees before the creek that you can see the beach area and the location where my truck was parked. I was still 60 to 70 feet offshore, trolling in. My plan was to troll right by the creek mouth, then beach the boat and grab some relax time and have a snooze. Well, let me tell you, that never happened. When I cleared the clump of trees, I was still gazing at the lake when sudden movement behind the driver's fender of my truck grabbed my attention. Even with the canopy blocking my view, I could see what looked like a large black bear with his back to me standing beside my truck. Our minds play funny tricks on us. They make you see things, or it's just not capable of comprehending things that we have never seen before. What I thought was a black bear soon ended up being something that would turn my mind and world inside out. This being, as you call him, sensed me and turned towards the lake. When it caught sight of me, instead of running towards cover like normal animals, it ran directly around my truck and straight towards the lake edge. So big and huge, it was mammoth in size. It ran on 2 legs. It was like time stopped as I watched this thing run towards me. I remember in replay every second it took to reach the water's edge constantly in my mind. I was fortunate that the boat was slowly veering off away from shore. I was now eyeball to eyeball with this creature, maybe 70 feet away from shore. Almost in a state of auto motion, I cut the power on the electric motor. It was like something came over me and I could not move. I could not do anything but stare at the enormity of this monster. It was jet black, except for the hair near its face, which had some mottled gray. It had almost no neck, broad, about 3.5 feet wide. I then noticed its left arm was odd. It was dangling by its side and quite withered in comparison to the other arm. It had no mass to it, and I realized it was either a crippled or injured arm. Then the scream came. Never have I heard or seen something so awful. I could literally feel the power of the scream. It was deafening and made my head pound. I felt nauseous and stunned, and I felt my body let go and I urinated myself. Sitting like a victim, bobbing around on my boat, this wild animal would have torn me to shreds if I had been within its reach. No doubt in my mind I would have been a dead man if I had reached the beach. After 3 huge screams, it turned its upper body towards the creek and the entry road. It then looked back at me, kind of showed me its teeth. I will detail features after I finish my train of thought here. Then it turned towards my campsite and bolted for the tree line. I saw it grab its left arm by the wrist while it ran. The crippled arm was swinging loosely by the time he grabbed it. Never have I seen an animal so large move so fast. It was at the tree line and disappeared in mere seconds. It felt like an eternity that I sat there trying to comprehend what just happened. And then I heard the noise. There's a bunch of trucks coming down the main gravel road. I could hear the gravel and the motors coming down the road. They were maybe half a mile away from the turn. The Sasquatch heard this way before I did, and that's why I ran off. I was never so thankful to have more people around me in my life. These trucks came up to the Depot Creek turn and turned in. They were full of all young guys and girls coming to party at the beach. I felt the tears running down my face as I switched the power back on my motor and went to shore. I was a mess, shaking, piss all over my pants, sweat pouring down my forehead. I jumped into the water up to my crotch so my piss stains would look like I was in the lake. I drug my boat up to my truck with all the gear still in it. Adrenaline will do that to you. When I got to my truck, I saw the reason this being was so mad. I had disturbed its food supply. My plywood grub box, which I had left sitting on the tailgate, was beside the driver's side, lid torn off, broken all to rat shit. You remember those nice aluminum Colemans? It was bent to hell as well. The frozen meat was still there. The bag of fruit I had was mostly just chunks laying on the ground. I had about a half a dozen apples and 4 or 5 oranges in a paper sack next to the cooler in my plywood kit box. Apples and oranges were all gone, just bits laying on the ground. I picked up all remnants, threw them into the broken cooler. I had not even bothered putting the boat on the roof rack. I opened up the tailgate and literally stuffed the boat nose first into the box, tossed in all my gear in on top. I've never loaded my gear up in 2 minutes before, but I've never been so scared in all my life. The 3 trucks and all those kids had crossed the creek and were driving around behind me. They saw I was leaving, and one truck pulled up beside me. He asked if I was leaving. I simply nodded, and they asked if I was taking my firewood. I managed to tell him to help himself. Looking back now, I should have told those kids to get the hell out of there, to go back down to the government site. If something had happened, it would have been 100% my fault. I recall trying to put the key in the ignition of my truck, hands shaking so violently that I had to use both to put a key in. I remember driving back towards government campsite at the north end of the lake and feeling like I was going to vomit. The anxiety was unbelievable. My entire body was still shaking. When I arrived in the parking lot at the north end, I changed my pants and clothes in my truck. My boat was almost falling out the back. I secured it with some rope, pulled a jug of water out, and left that parking lot full throttle. The next few days were terrible. I had continuous nightmares. I could not eat. I couldn't sleep. I sequestered myself in my house. I didn't even unload my truck for 2 days. On the 4th day, I was starting to get a grip. I was alive. I avoided getting ripped apart, and I made it home in one piece. I would reflect on it, relive it, and try to tell myself the outcome was positive. But I felt like such a chicken shit, weak coward or something along those lines. I always pack when I'm camping, and I had a 44 mag lever behind the seat that day. Would the outcome have been different if the gun was in the boat with me? Would the state of mind I was in when this effort was screaming at me allow me to pick up my gun and burn a few holes in them? I've questioned myself for years regarding this. I think the outcome would have remained the same. I don't think I was in any state of mind to have picked up my rifle and fired. The term infrasound has been tossed around by the Sasquatch community. Is that what it is? Facts, visual, height. Measuring the height of my truck 6 foot 4 inches, and the fact that I was viewing his right hand shoulder, back, and head above my canopy, I would say 8 foot 6, give or take. Weight? Not as filled out as a grizzly, but still very thick throughout the neck, shoulders, and back. The legs and hips were proportionate and did not look long or short. It had massive thighs. My guess would be 650 to 700 pounds. Arm length was long, just above knees. Right arm was huge and was covered in 2-inch long coarse hair. Left arm was withered and dangled by its side the entire time. I saw no movement in this arm. My guess it had an accident or was involved in a fight with one of its own, or eyes were black, no white seen, large and wide, deep set. There was no hooded lids from my recollection. Mouth, lips were dark gray, same with mouth's interior. There were no distinguishable red gums. They were lighter gray. Teeth were flat and rounded tops, except for the incisors, which were rounded and longer, almost an omnivore style of tooth. Mouth was large and flat. You could see the jaw muscles when it was screaming. Teeth were distinct, light brown yellow. Nose was broad flat, dark in color. Nostrils were not turned upward like in most artist renditions I've seen. Picture a boxer's nose, but a larger scale. I've watched most of your videos, and I love to read the comment sections. There's a few who write, "They are not there to hurt you, they just want to be left alone." I wish that one day I could go see one. Steve, you know better, and I know better. These are not friendly giants. They're not stuffed animals. They're wild, smart animals. Who, if given the chance, would pull you apart like a rag doll or gnaw on your bones? People who want to see one would change their minds after my experience. I think they know what a gun is, and if they see a person with a gun, they avoid. I believe they travel in small packs, and maybe the one I stumbled upon was an outcast because of his injury, a hindrance to their community, so they ousted him from the group. I've tried to go back to the woods every year ever since. I can't bring myself to get it done. I've sold all my guns, camping, hunting gear. Once a year I venture out to a tourist trap lake in the interior, paved roads, log cabins. You know the ones. That's about as outdoorsy as I get now. It's a shame. Well, that about sums it up. I wish this had never happened. If I could turn back time, I would be 150 feet off the beach with a 45-70 and a hunting buddy with me. This bastard would have not to worry about scaring the shit out of anyone ever again, and would be on a slab in the anthropology department at UBC, and the mystery would be over. Keep up the great work, and keep up your 6th sense. Call me Bob. All right, Bob. That's one hell of a shit-eating experience, man. That's not a cool experience. And it's also not the first time a wounded Sasquatch has been reported either, right? The Bosberg incident. Bosberg cripple, I think it was called. It's funny, because the crow flies right there on their side of the valley. There's tons of sightings. I never had anything happen on this side ever in years. It's weird. But anyway, I wonder, you never know, that group of people that came after you, the chances of them having their shit ransacked late in the night were pretty high that weekend, wouldn't you think? And if any of those people if they did have something like that happen to them as well after you left, the chances are one or more of them are probably watching this channel right now. And if you are, and this sounds familiar, Depot Creek, north end of Chilliwack Lake, in 1986, then you might have possibly had somebody take your food and scare the shit out of you. And you can email it into me at sharemystoryhowtohunt.com or tellmystoryhowtohunt.com, and we'll share it with the rest of the planet and get your experience off your chest and get you back that respect you deserve, right? Who would ever want to go through that? Especially when it sees you and comes running towards you with absolute rage on the go. That's not a very smart move either, though, is it? I mean, I just don't understand the desperation, the acts of desperation in a way some of these things do, like that one in particular. What's it thinking? Broad daylight, it's going to go hit up your truck for your food. Didn't even know where you were. You could have crosshairs on it with a 300 Magnum anywhere at the time. You never know, right? And then, I always tell everybody, if you ever see one of these things, don't shoot it if you don't have to. I would not shoot it because I am a firm believer you would probably be starting something that you wish you never did. But what do you do when something, it's fair game. I mean, if you turn the tables, if you put one of those suckers somewhere on a beach and you snuck up on it and then it saw you and you ran towards it 20 more meters and stared it down and growled and screamed at it, I'm pretty sure it's going to either fight you to the death instantly or take off, right? I mean, you can't be that stupid. Why would you offer up and tempt a human being to put a hole in your frickin' head like that unless you weren't here very long and you're absolutely inexperienced and you had never been here before and possibly never even seen a human before? There's always that chance, right? I'll tell you what, the majority of these things that have seen humans with guns, they don't want nothing to do with them. I'll never forget that guy in BC that was talking to me and John Bendernagel and told us about having his 30-06 scope on the forehead of that one. I think he said it was like 20 yards or something. And he said he could see the wrinkles in his forehead and the whites of its eyes. And he put his crosshair from eyeball to eyeball down to its mouth and back up to its forehead. And then his buddy came out and that thing jumped behind the tree and was just poking at him, looking at the tree when that crosshair was coming up, and it knew what the gun was. But a lot of these things, the way they react and act, it's like they've never been here before. You never know, right? But anyway, I think I'll leave that one alone by itself, and I'm going to keep hiking. And I'll once I get up over top of this mountain and start heading back down that big timber, I'll see if there's a cool spot there to stop. And I'll do another share there. And I got a big day ahead of me tomorrow. I'm going to go way up valley, and I think I just might go into the stand tomorrow. And there's a huge trail at the end of the corner swamp.
We're below Giant's Playground. You can see the tunnel and scan over to the top of the tower and very slowly around until we reach the top of Thunderbolt. This is an ancient riverbed, which is known as a road between Giant's Playground and Spiral Mountain. As you can see, construction engineers are tearing down Spiral Mountain to reinforce a road which ends exactly at Giant's Playground and connects to I-90 freeway. This is what they're tearing down. Spiral Mountain Megaliths.
Welcome, this is Jolynn from One Heart TV, and I'm here in beautiful Montana today with a special guest, somebody I'm just thrilled to be with. I'm here with Julie Ryder. She lives in Helena, Montana, and Julie's got some special gifts here. She states, we have discovered over 90 extremely ancient megaliths and pre-megalith sites. We're going to talk to her about that right now because we're at one. But Julie, welcome to One Heart TV.
Thank you, Jolene.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Jolene and I spent visiting the pre-megalithic sites. But today, just to ground down, I brought her to Giant's Playground, which has been verified with satellite deep geoscans that this is one of the oldest sites known. These dolmens, this is evergreen dolmen, ramped down into just 2 circular chambers under the surface. So Jolene has been invited to come, and this is the first live interview I've done, because she's just this beautiful spiritual person that captured my heart.
Well, now can you take us back a little bit? When did we discover this beautiful structure? Beautiful.
My husband discovered this on Valentine's Day in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
He told me for my Valentine's present he was going to give me a dolmen. And we were driving by, he saw light coming through the tunnel dolmen. He stopped. It was a beautiful, warm February day in Montana, which is rare. We put on our sweatshirts and we climbed around. And we named it Giant's Playground because it looked as if there had been giants stacking huge blocks.
Love it.
I came back every time possible for the next 3 months. I took photographs, I talked to the spiritual guardians of the place, and I just explored. But when I put it on the internet, I kept getting back all these incredible comments like, Julie, you're wrong. This is in Australia. This is in Russia. This is in South Africa. This is in France. This is in Europe, right? Because an ancient worldwide civilization built this all over the world. However, this was in the beginning because here we have icons and statues of multiple different, what became religious artifacts, icons.
Religious artifacts, okay.
What became religious artifacts.
Okay.
So we have a Buddha, exactly like the ones in Cambodia. We have an Egyptian Benu bird, identified by one of the archaeologists in Egypt by photograph. We have a statue of Tartessia, who was the last queen of Atlantis, very much like the Lady of Elche, found in Andalusia, Spain. We have a robot, because this was a very advanced civilization. There was a lot of AI robotic technology that built this civilization. There's also a pink vault, perfectly pink stone, with an inset map of Pangaea covering the outside. It shows before the continents split. So the ancient ones sculptured their faces and their statues into the landscape so that they would be remembered.
Beautiful.
It's all, that's what I described as all right here at Giant's Playground. But then it goes on for like 100 miles.
100 miles. Which way from here?
Actually, always.
Always, okay.
But there's a perfect line, exactly perfect on a map, that goes from the Pipestone area, the dolmens, the quarry site, through Giant's Playground. Next is the Boulder Dolmen, the Whale Dolmen, the Tizer Dolmen, the top of the Mystery Rock Prime, the Gift Dolmen. They're all exactly on a grid line.
Beautiful.
That's one grid line. There are several here.
Beautiful. I got to crawl up in there. I'm going. All right.
Go. I brought Jolene to the Robotic Watcher, which is a stone-carved robot. The robot has a left eye that is white with a circular black pupil that lights up on the spring equinox when the sun comes over this mountain at sunrise. The Robotic Watcher has a large knob on the center of the chest. There are similar pictographs in Utah in the Saco Canyon that have 2 and 3 knobs. Our watcher has 1. We believe that the ancient civilizations were highly technological, and the same type of figures exist all over the world. The ancient Sumerian documents talk about the bionic beings which helped build and mine gold. So here we have a bionic being which is still in a robotic form. The base of the Robotic Watcher, you've got 2 legs that come down with like boot-type feet that are set on a different base. Here we have the a very unique feature is this red brick configuration, and there's a hole in the center, just big enough for a finger. This exact same 90-degree angle cut configuration, looks exactly like this, is on the front of the Pipestone wall about 30 miles from here as the crow flies. It also has the hole in the center. I believe that this was a key code, like a keypad. And it was scraped off, much like the ancient Egyptians turned the Sphinx from a cat, a female cat, into a pharaoh's head. Later civilizations came and they built over top of many of these structures. We see very ancient structures with layers and layers of other civilizations, icons over top of them. I think this was removed. However, some tell me that they believe that the technology is still turned on.
We're back at another feature part of the site, Giants Playground, and Julie's going to explain this feature.
Thank you, Jolene. This is the Tower Dolmen. It's a square structure, a total stone that runs all the way to the road below us, about 2 stories, and then deep underground. It's humongous. On the top of the Tower Dolmen is a very large stone that looks like it's been covered like a fitted sheet. It's covered with geopolymer, balanced on a secondary stone, which is balanced on an area about this big. So you have incredible weight of solid granite, balanced, and then on a piece this big. I had a geologist here, and at first he was explaining how all this had to be perfectly natural until he got to this point. And he pulls out his calculator and he starts figuring the weight of all that granite and how it's perfectly balanced on a piece this big and upright. And right then he throws down his calculator and he says, they were just showing off. There's no way nature could have done this.
That's fantastic.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think did you pick up a piece of it
Yeah.
that you could show us?
This is a piece of geopolymer that has flaked off. Now the geologists call this spalling. However, if we get there, there's a piece over there that is perfectly red on this side, white on this side, and fitted around blocks. So this is geopolymer concrete. Lately been made very popular by an institute called the Geopolymer Institute in the UK. Massive research, massive documentation, and he proves that the pyramid in Egypt was actually made out of, part of it made out of concrete, not stone blocks. His data points are phenomenal. And we find that here a lot because a lot of the stone is not from this area. It's pink. And this is only gray and gray granite, covered with lichen.
It sure is. It's absolutely gorgeous and very powerful. Very powerful to me. The rocks, I don't know, there's some kind of definite energy. So.
These rocks, this site was built on an earth energy grid line where the vortex lines come together. Where the vortex line calls what's called a continuity-discontinuity vortex site. So the whole site is a vortex, the whole Montana Megaliths. If you draw an earth energy grid line from Angkor Wat in Cambodia, across the top, it comes through the Montana Megaliths, it comes through the areas in Mexico where the Olmec heads are and where Veracruz, Mexico, the ancient civilizations, and into Nazca, Peru. It's a perfect grid line. And so being on that grid line, the energy, the earth magnetic energy is extremely strong here. Okay. And then the crystal in the stone, much of this quartz is 40% quartz crystal. It enhances and magnifies that electromagnetic energy. So we use this as a healing site. We do ceremonies here. We bring medicine people here. Just heard a story ended yesterday with a young woman we brought here who wanted to have a child in the worst way. And she's birthing her child.
Really?
So many, many wonderful stories of healings that are happening because the earth energy grid accelerates and magnifies our intentions.
There's a lot to be said about that, indeed. Thank you for sharing that part of it. Let's show them what it looks like.
This is a statue of Tartessia de Montana, my name. It was discovered by Andrew Barker from Andalusia, Spain. Tartessia is reported to be the last queen of Atlantis. They have found a lady of Elche in Andalusia, Spain, with big gears over both ears, like in her hair. Looks very much like Princess Leia. Looks very much like the Hopi Indian maidens with the big buns in their hair. Here we have Tartessia. She has you can see the features of her eyes, nose, and mouth, a haircut, and a gear shift over her right ear, and comes up to another gear shift above it. You can see her chin, and she's on a full pillar. The ancient ones would build their infrastructure out of stone granite and then build in the features with the geopolymer concrete so that they were more exactly refined. We found a lot of statues here where the geopolymer concrete has sloughed off, but you can see the indications of where the features would be. So you can see what her eyes, her nose, her mouth would have been featured, and still the rondelles in her hair. Tartessia guards the main complex here. In front of her, Tartessia is the tunnel dolmen, which we'll show you in just a moment, and the tower is to the left above her. Tartessia faces west. The robot faces east. Buddha Day, Montana faces north, and the Egyptian Benno bird faces west. That's cardinal west, cardinal north, cardinal east, and cardinal west. So they face the four directions. They're the guardians of Giant's Playground. Jolynn, I brought you to the tunnel. This is how we discovered Giant's Playground. A light was coming through this tunnel, and we can see it from the road. And so as we were driving by, there was a light coming in a square, coming right through the side of a mountain. And we stopped, came up and saw and found Giant's Playground. This tunnel is, the huge rocks on top of it have fallen over, obscuring the top. And yet there's still an entryway. Many rocks have fallen down but there's an entryway with stair steps that go down to the surface. Okay. And the top of the capstone of this dolmen is fitted just like a fitted bed sheet, exactly like the one on the tower behind me. And there's polygonal construction. There's cyclopean blocks holding it together, and very sharp cuts, proving that this was an ancient, intentionally constructed megalith. I believe at one time this was the entryway into Giant's Playground. This is the portal through which they entered this magical place.
What is a portal?
A portal in time and space, oftentimes they are square, like a doorway. Oftentimes they look like a dolmen. But a portal is an entry into another time-space continuum.
And inside this area is where they might have done ceremony?
My personal belief at this moment, subject to change with new information, as I always am, I'm open to any new information that comes that proves valid. But at this moment in time, my working theory is that this was built extremely ancient because of the construction of the prime sites, which are built all over the world, always over gold mining sites. So this was an industrial plant. Okay. Later civilizations, as they began to worship the highly advanced civilizations that built it, built icons and statues and built religions over this knowledge. And so therefore they inserted into the site the Benno bird, because he's stuck in between. Carved the robotic watcher. The Buddha was added. They're added to the outside of the structure, I believe, by a much, much later civilization. So there were epochs of time where one civilization would build and it was destroyed by asteroids, floods, pole shifts through many, many cycles. The indigenous elders talk a lot about this in the first world, second world, third world, fourth world, fifth world. We had a Tibetan Rinpoche Tulku who came here, and he talked about how huge the animals and the plants and the people were in the first world, and then slowly deteriorated as they became more material until they got very, very, very small, like this big, and then came back up to the size that we are now. So here we have statues that are between 15 and 20 feet high. So my theory is that this is they rebuilt these in the fourth world. They put the statues in the fourth world because they're familiar to us. We recognize the Buddha. We recognize the Benno bird. We recognize them. Okay. where in the pre-megalithic sites, they're humongous, right? And there's many human ET hybrids. We've found figures of them. And everything there is bigger than life. So that was a much, much older pre-megalithic civilization. Things weren't built. There's no dolmens up there. There's no square structures. There's no mining energy plants. Okay, it is pre-megalithic. Where further south, we see the cuts and the structures and the highly technologically advanced building. So these were intentionally constructed. Welcome home.
Welcome home.
This is behind the robotic watcher. You can see the sheer lines, 90-degree cut blocks. Granite naturally splits at 30 and 60-degree angles. If you see a series of 90-degree angle blocks and straight lines, that was intentionally constructed. Nature doesn't do that. The beautiful feature about this is that we also have a sonic knob coming out of the side. And the entire formation is a perfect square with 90-degree angles at each corner. Just one more proof point that this was intentional construction. One of the unusual features here is that we know this was constructed. One of the proof points is that there's a pink, very smooth granite stone exactly next to a completely different textured gray granite stone topped by the same capstone. Two completely different types of stone do not exist next to each other in the same place unless they were brought here or intentionally constructed here. This is a major proof point. We see this throughout the Montana Megaliths. Cut pink stone set into black walls. One of the major features here at Giant's Playground is that we have pink stone inset into black or gray stone with 90-degree cut angles. Behind me is the pink vault. There are 2 rows of stacked black granite blocks cut at 90-degree angles, enclosing 2 sculptured pieces of pink granite. There's a geomural on the face of the granite. A geomural is geopolymer concrete that's special colors that is used to paint images onto the rocks. It is a perfect map of Pangaea before the continents split. So the builders left us maps. We're finding that there are several maps here of land and territory that we're starting to discover what is. Where do these maps fit? This is an ongoing exploration. Behind the pink vault is the heart dolmen. Layers of hearts and suspended layers of hearts. So this is an energy vortex center, okay, that maps the ancient world.
Well, Julie, this has been absolutely remarkable. I mean, I can feel the energy, as I said, and you've done so much research. Again, did you just stumbled upon this?
Actually, Native American elders from 3 different tribes, unknown to each other, told me this is what I would be doing. They told me about the ancient cities of light, the prophecies. I was told to find these and take the information to the world. And thanks to Jolene, we're doing that. We're taking this information to the world.
We're definitely going to take this to the world. We need to help this site, very much so. Do you not agree?
I agree. There is a road construction project going on that is tearing down the area in front of Giants Playground and the whole side of the Spiral Mountain complex. They're actually breaking up megaliths with construction equipment, hauling it away to straighten out a road that is in the middle of nowhere. $6 million project in the middle of nowhere. 75% of the roads in Montana are dirt roads.
Dirt roads.
However, they're building the road exactly from Giants Playground to the freeway, I-90. And they're straightening out the curves, taking it down 40, 50 feet in the middle of nowhere. We're concerned.
I'm concerned. I drove all the way here from California to interview this delightful person who really has done her work, her research down to the bottom line. And she is now wanting to save this. Obviously, I do too. I have a great passion. Where can they find you? More of your sites. You took us to multiple ones yesterday. Where can they find you?
My website, I have two websites. The first one started out as galacticfacets.com. However, it became overwhelming because I mixed a lot of the esoteric photographs of the crystal skulls that belong to the Cherokee, of orbs, together. Then when the U.S. Forest Service threatened me with 6 months in prison if I brought people here, I started a second website called Montana Megaliths.com, and that is just about the megalithic sites. It's not complete by any means.
Never.
And I'm slowly rewriting it. I'm gaining abilities to write better. A lot of practice the last 8 years. I'm starting to photograph, better photographs, better designs, and I'm joining what I've been taught from friends all around the world. There's no way this would be possible without thousands and thousands of Facebook friends, researchers in their own right, who are contributing to the body of knowledge. I'm a registered nurse. This isn't my background. I find these sites intuitively, and I just go to them. Then I document them, put them on the internet, and the whole world comes back. People from all over the world telling me what they are, how they work, why they are. And I appreciate that because we have matches with what we have here at Giants Playground all over the world in these ancient civilizations. And together, we're going to protect, and we're going to learn, and we're going to take back our own history that has been hidden from us. We're doing that together.
I don't think I need to see anymore. Thank you so much for giving yourself your time and effort, and I think you've got more to find. So stay tuned. We'll have everything down below for you to find her sites. Again, this is One Heart TV. Thank you for this interview.
And thank you.
And we're out. Peace, love to you all. This is Jolene.
Would more effective.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
Running can